Are you ready to uncover the real stories behind successful entrepreneurs? The Success Tax Podcast explores the trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship with eye-opening insights from the entrepreneurs themselves. Join Eric Green and Tony Carter as they dive deep into the highs, lows, and hidden costs of building a thriving business. Get ready to revitalize your energy and unlock tremendous wins on your entrepreneurial journey.
All right. Thanks for coming back here at the Success Tax. I'm Eric Green. I'm here with Tony Carter. Last time we started, we were revisiting with Dr. Rick Wells and talking about the game plan. All right. And not just as a global, but each letter breaking down. And we focused last time on the game and understanding the rules of the game. Well, the next letter, A, is about attitude. And for those of us in business and state police, attitude is everything. All right. And so we're going to continue breaking this down because it really is eye-opening. And to me, they're all important, but to me, attitude is so critical.
It's everything. And when you mentioned that, it brought me back a number of years to when I first went to the State Police Academy. Mm-hmm. And we were running up the stairs, and at some point in time, you had to get your training binder. And then you shuffle across as a training troop to the classrooms. You sit down, you put the binder down, and you can't touch anything, right, until you're told to do so. And you open up that first, the cover, and the very first page says, attitude is everything. Mm. And it sets the mind, it gives you a mindset, a framework for, what is to follow and the way you get to choose to interpret that.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's great to be back again. I mean, I love this stuff. So I appreciate so much taking the opportunity with folks that I respect to talking about stuff like this. It's important, I think. And attitude, one of the big lessons I learned in the Marine Corps, and I may have told you this before, that, they don't just want you to swab the deck and sweep and clean up. They want you to whistle while you're doing it. And it's a key component of leadership, and it is absolutely necessary for success. If your philosophy is your way of life, then your attitude is your way of thinking. To continue with the Marine Corps, it's like it's your strategy, it's your approach to life, it's how you go about it. And if you listen to Clausewitz, which I've read and studied in the core of my professional military education, strategy is built, attitude is built on success. So what have you accomplished that you're proud of? Okay. It doesn't have to be big, small. One of the things that I accomplished that I'm very proud of is I hit a home run in college baseball. All right. What were the habits that made that so? Well, that's when I started lifting. I started lifting for baseball. Never stopped, by the way. If you're not lifting weights, you're wrong. Okay. So
I went to the gym this morning. I have a clear conscience, just so we're clear here.
That is the success in a nutshell. Yeah. If you're not. So that was the habit that made it so. Further, what's the realization what did you realize about that? That I have to improve. If I want something, I have to improve. I have to better myself. And the results are going to be better than you can imagine. I ended up lifting for baseball. The results were awesome, hitting a baseball 400 feet. However, your clothes start to fit right. You're healthier. You can play with your children. You can run around a block whenever you need to, right? You can carry your golf bag in the heat. Yep. And it's like, people are like, are you carrying your bag? I'm like, yeah, is that a problem?
Right. No. I can carry my own. Right. Fine.
So, that way of thinking and it built on success and being aware of the habits and the realizations along the way. Now you start to form your strategy, and it becomes a way of acting. It becomes a way of living the philosophy that you develop. Even more so, it becomes virtuous activity, which is super special.
In one of our conversations, you have a particular, I'm going to call it interest, it's an affinity for helping people understand and value parenting, the power of it, and in particular, the mindset that one should have when you're going to have a child, and where does that child, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but you go ahead. And
that is, I so appreciate that question. I think that the most important responsibility that a parent can have is the education of their child. And if you want to know what that is, I think primarily it's the art and science of living well. What does it mean to lead a good life? And how can you improve the child's and your capacity to endure? How do you persevere? What does it take to persevere in a marriage? What does it take to persevere in building a business, in finishing a degree? It takes perseverance. Well, there's a key to that. Ask me about that later. And then how do you have your child be active in associations, on the team, in the classroom, with the teacher, with the coach, the material they're taking in, and how they're expressing themselves? How are they actively engaged in their community? Those are lessons that need to be taught. How do you improve self-control? How do you lengthen the distance between an impulse and an action, and have a maturity that you have the emotional intelligence to do the right thing? And then being understanding, and even more importantly, teaching your child how to understand others, because everyone wants to be understood. If you want to be a rock star, show that you understand people. And that's a big fill as far as education goes, especially in education of the child. But then again, it all leads to leading by example. How are you doing that? How are you building your capacity to endure, being active in your associations, having self-control, and seeking understanding in order for you to lead and live a good life?
You had mentioned in one of our conversations, and Eric and I were talking about this, when you said when a child's trying to figure life out in the beginning, and they're trying to learn how to problem solve, how to view the world, when they're new to this thing, they often look to their parents first, right? The parent serves as the example, sometimes even unbeknownst to them, as to how your kid will approach things in life.
Yeah, they're modeling you. And in the first 10, 12 years, it's all by observing, seeing what you're doing, and the feeling that you're giving, right? You're imparting a feeling when you're reading to them in bed at night. So you're not only reading, that there's an emotional connection there. There's something spiritual. But leading by example is the way. So and then after 12, let's say 12 to 18 years old, now it's about communicating to them about the action. Now you're expressing to them your commander's intent, your parental intent, which now your personal philosophy comes into play, your attitude comes into play, what it is that you're about, what it is that you want for your children. All of that is interpreted and expressed to the child, because the interesting thing about it is they're seeking that information just like we are. They're seeking it. And if the one who doesn't have the reverent relationship with them is not communicating with them, they're getting it from somewhere else. Peers, teachers, social media, they're getting it from elsewhere. So the influence that a parent has should be compelling.
And I know we're here primarily to talk about G.A.M.E. in the context of entrepreneurship, but I can't wait for when we start diving or tailoring G.A.M.E. for families,
right,
and things along those lines. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, no, but there's a whole bunch of stuff there to unpack. And I don't know anything about the Marine Corps, but a friend of mine who's a former Navy SEAL had told me that one of the things they highlight to you, like in BUDS, which is the basic underwater demolition, it's this thing you see on TV where it's the elimination course. You don't really learn to be a Navy SEAL, but they get rid of everyone who shouldn't be there. And he said, advice is get up, make your bed the way we taught you to, brush your teeth, and be at 5 a.m. PT on time. That's 3 victories you've started the day with. And that's going to lead to more, and I think that in terms of entrepreneurship, these people that struggle and they get to a point where they're frustrated, and I've been there. I can't grow the business. I'm struggling here.
We talked about that.
It's helpful to look back and be like, you know what? Look how far up the mountain I've already gotten. Mm-hmm. So I just got to figure this out, versus quitting. And so one of the things is to notch these small victories. Like, I want to build $1 million business. Well, what if we have a good plan, we get started, and we start getting some momentum? That is something to be happy about, right? And your attitude, it's important to focus on in this sense, the positive things that are happening. You don't ignore the negative, but you can deal with that versus just giving up and quitting. But the other thing about attitude, and I have found this, I'm going to stick on entrepreneurship. If you want to be an entrepreneur, it would be helpful to hang out with other entrepreneurs. All right? If you want to be an educator, I would start hanging out with educators. All right? One, because they are going to, and again, I've heard this, but it was a great metaphor. They were describing kind of the value you hold for yourself as a thermostat on the wall. All right? Let's say, for instance, I am financially, I'm an 80-degreer, and Dr. Wells is a 200-degreer. But if I'm hanging around with him, he is actually going to adjust, to run with the metaphor, my thermostat somewhere between mine and his, 100, 120, 140. Same thing. If you are somebody who's hanging around with people who drag you down in anything, they are going to move your thermostat backwards. And so partly, I would suggest to those folks, whatever it is, whether it's in religion, finance, parenting. When we spoke about the G, you'd mentioned how your mom did it, and she looked at other people and did what they do. In a way, it's sort of similar in that hang out with people who are doing what you want to do. Because, first of all, you'll get ideas, you'll learn from watching them. It will also adjust your attitude, and also you don't have these unrealistic expectations. Hang around with people who invest in real estate. You learn the hard way. It's really about the numbers, and there's a lot of work that goes into this. Not flipping through the paper and that property looks good.
And you'll learn about the people aspect of it also. But what I want to do for our audience too is I want to just make sure that I don't want us to gloss over a very important point you both brought up, and that is this idea that celebrate the smallest of victory. Right? Because that will reinforce or even set you in the right direction to have a more positive outlook on your experience. And then when the negative thing happens, it was expected, per the G. We knew something inevitably was going to go wrong. Yep. But it doesn't mean the whole thing's wrong, right? It just means that this is an obstacle or a part of the mountain that needs to be negotiated. That's what it means simply. But that our general mindset is that we are enthusiastic at this calling that we have, and that we approach it with motivation and enthusiasm along the way, and always with an eye towards success. And I think you do that, as Dr. Wells pointed out, and you reaffirmed, by celebrating the smallest of victories. And to your point, when they said mop the floor, I didn't say just mop the floor, take some soap and some water and put on a mop and start mopping the floor. I said mop the floor with a smile.
Great
and
attitude.
Be grateful about the fact that you have the opportunity in such a great country to serve and to mop a floor. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to do that, because others don't have that.
Listen, if it's my business, all of a sudden I don't mind taking out the garbage and emptying the dishwasher and everything else, because when people come into our office, it looks the way I want it to. It is clean. We have clean dishes to put cookies out in the conference room for the estate planners or whatever, right? So or I could look at it, garbage, whatever. The reality is big picture. What are you doing? I'm moving the ball forward. Everything I do, whether it's taking out the garbage, the new software, actually doing the work, whatever. And so it is how you view it. And if you look at it with, this is, even if it's mopping the floor, you know what? It's moving the thing forward. How do you figure that? Well, other Marines are going to be able to come in here. We don't have to worry about people getting sick from stuff left going bad, all right? Everyone around me is made better for these little things. You know, don't overlook the little things. By the way, and I'm sure you've learned this, if you can't do the little things right, you're never going to do the big things right. And so it's these little things that matter.
Oh, they hugely, and it's the difference between Tigger and Eeyore.
Yeah.
Right? It's right, you know, in so many ways visually, it's the difference between the two of them. And you get to choose whether you're going to be Tigger or Eeyore. That is 100% your choice in terms of how you're going to process whatever is happening along the way.
For the people old enough to know who Tigger and Eeyore are, they're characters in Winnie the Pooh. And Tigger was always very energetic and, you know, ready to go, and Eeyore is doomed. We're all doomed.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that was Glum from Gulliver's Travels. But anyway, they're all the same, right? The negative nanny there who's like, no, we're all dead.
Well, that's an important point. Who you hang around with matters, you know, and to continue with the being in the service. If you're around people and their language consists of words like glory, honor, courage, and commitment, you tend to aspire to those things, and those things are worthy of aspiration.
Yes, they
So
are.
who you hang around with matters is an important part, and we've talked about the power of influence with people and material that you take in. You have to seek that out. You seek it out. And to your other point, you better enjoy the journey, because what's the saying? It's about the road. It's not the end. So
the journey never ends.
The journey never ends. You take it, and what you began with, Eric. If you take a look at where you've come from, you know that you're probably living the life that you desired 10 years ago. You know, and you'll miss it. And you'll miss it, which is the power of study, because you can document. This is where I was. This is where I am. Let me give you something that I do all the time, and it's the key to strength training. There's 3 keys to strength training, and I'll give you one of them. One of them is hair metal, the other is tape, and the other is Chuck Taylor's. Hair metal. Hair metal inspires me because it makes me think of myself in high school. So whenever I'm strength training, either bench, press, deadlift, if I have Bon Jovi playing in the background, it's on. Only because I'm doing this thing, I know where I came from, and I'm so grateful. I can't not be grateful. And the gratitude, you know, people may talk a good game, but gratitude is one of the more important things. And, you know, I think I certainly get it from the family. You know, learning from my mom that this life is a gift. So what you do is important. And how you do it is also important. And who you help along the way is important. That approach, that attitude has served me well. And it's definitely something that I imparted to my children. And they're fabulous human beings too. All of them. Got 4 of them.
No doubt.
Yeah, just that whole game plan. One of the more prouder things is my children and how they came out. I mean, they're living their best life, and it's fantastic to see.
And one of the things going to attitude, and you said this right before we started taping the show, is I saw your hands go up, and you were saying that the game plan is about a lens, right?
Yeah.
We're not trying to pigeonhole anything into one component of the game plan, but rather
you miss it. You miss it. It's a lens through which you see the world, interpret the world. It's not about taking a certain event, and trying to stuff it back into a particular letter. There's something, I noticed it a great deal in the schools where you're talking about the different types of intelligences. And rather than looking through presenting an idea through the multiple intelligences, they spend more time trying to pigeonhole someone in. Oh, I'm a kinesthetic learner, or I'm an auditory learner. No, you're a human being, and you learn through all of your
Right. Makes sense.
The multiple intelligence framework is a lens through which it's not something to pigeonhole someone. So you can see how the energy, if I take the energy trying to pigeonhole myself into a particular thing, you're missing the point. But if you put on the lens of attitude where I'm improving my perseverance, I'm getting around the right people, I'm doing what I love, I'm seeking and living the good life. That's the thing. I'm not trying to categorize an activity. It's not your best use of time.
The other thing, you mentioned you're reading and all that. If there's something that somebody wants to do today, information, I know I'm the one who told you to put down your phone, but
Pick it back up now.
Yeah, but the point is, there is information now everywhere. All right, and so educate yourself. In fact, you can find mentors even if you never meet them.
That's a
Right?
fact.
You can go read about people that, again, blaze the trail ahead of you, and again, do what they do. Now, again, the media may have changed, but generally speaking, I find the activities sort of the same. Before, I'd get a room full of people and sit and speak, and today I sit at a table with a microphone and a computer. And I can actually reach more people that way.
That's actually, yeah.
Yeah, but if you feel that you want to do something and there's something lacking, you miss something, whatever, instead of beating yourself up, go get the information. I mean, you could take almost any course you want online from major universities. And so, part of that attitude is, if I don't have it, I'm going to go get it, what I need.
It's important enough to be monk-like in the study about the things that you want to pursue. Definitely that. And, I'll say there's a lot of information out there, but reading published works, complete published works, is incredibly valuable. So go out and get the information through published works. Take the time to read. It's not a blog thing. You don't create the glorious life through blogs
Or YouTube shorts.
or YouTube shorts. That's not. It's you in sacred space, reading, gleaning perspectives, and determining ways of thinking, because there's a lot of people that put a lot of valuable information down that have thought about issues of existence, of ambition, of questioning, of purpose. And there's value in spending quite a bit of time in pursuing that. There was an educational what was his name? He was a communication professor. But he's like, okay, if you knew that next week you were going to be put on a deserted island for at least 25 years, probably for the rest of your life, what 10 books, if they were allow you to bring 10 books, what 10 books would you bring with you? Pick one of those and start reading it. There's value
It's
in it.
necessary.
Yeah, it's necessary.
For you. Yeah, and when you talk about the journey and decision making, that just can't be underestimated either, right?
Right.
You were talking, and I was thinking about Robert Frost, and two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood. And as I think about that, it is about looking down a pathway and choosing which way you're going to go. But you have to make a choice which road you're going to go on.
Yeah.
That's your choice. That's the way I'm going up this particular mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could spend all day and all night and tomorrow into next year walking around the base of the mountain to try to find the exact perfect spot to take that first step. And you could stand there for a long period of time gazing at it, but at the end of the day, you have to make a choice, take a step.
Yeah, the Knights at a Round Table, right? They searching for the Holy Grail. They saw paths entering into the forest. They didn't take them. They went in and charted their own path.
And you mentioned, you refer to Dante's Inferno.
It's magical.
It's magical.
And one of the more, you can't find a better written exposition of someone's imaginative landscape than that.
When he makes reference to being, and clean this up if it needs to be cleaned up, something to the effect of in the middle of his life, it sounds like
he found himself in a dark wood.
In a dark wood.
Everyone finds themselves in a dark wood. Maybe not even in the middle of in your life, but you find yourself where you feel stuck. And that's what he found. And he somehow starts to make his way up the mountain and comes in contact with those temptations of self-control, pride, and greed. But then he gets a mentor. He finds his mentor, Virgil, who happens to be a poet, right? You mentioned Frost. There's power in poetry. There's power in meaning. So his mentor was a poet. And what drove him was his love for Beatrice. So mentorship, love what you do. There's power. It's just worth the exploration of those powerful ideas. And, the power in getting around people who are willing to explore ideas like that, and people who have techniques to find what it is that you're about as an educator, right? It means a deuce to pull out through questioning, through examining ambition, and coaching someone so that they are playing on the field of action that keeps them in the zone. Positive psychology, flow. People are living that life. It's there for you if you pursue it.
Eric and I were at lunch earlier, and on that, I had the distinct privilege of spending about 2.5 years with a trooper who unfortunately passed. He died very young, 40 years old, of cancer. And then subsequent to that, around that same time, I was asked to put together a leadership program. It led me to develop a segment of that called followership. And I used this particular trooper's life in that. And what I took from my time with him in 2.5 years is that even though he was in an orphanage, he was abandoned at birth, even though he left his parents that he was with there, and he spent quite a bit of time with one of his athletic coaches, he eventually found himself in the military. He eventually went on to become a local police officer. He went on to become a state trooper. And towards the end of his career, he went on and got his Juris Doctorate. And to further that story, we spent some time in a local hospital here. As he was nearing death, he wanted to marry his childhood sweetheart. She grew up in the same town, and she came down a hallway there in a white sweatsuit. He was in the bed, could not get up. And 50 of us lined that hallway to make sure that he, was able to fulfill that dream that he had. And so going to the spirit of this conversation about attitude, it really is everything. Because when I look at his life, he had a lot of reasons to be bitter. I mean, if you're not getting adopted until you're 6 years old and you try to live your best life, he actually built his own home in a town here in Connecticut. He was a fine example, as are many people out there when you look at them. And yet on the other side of that coin, you see people that complain about everything. Yeah. Right? Their road is that he didn't even choose in a lot of ways was never that challenging. And so I don't think that we can overemphasize this idea that attitude is everything. And with the right attitude, as the saying goes, you can do anything.
It's how you act. And, if you explore it further, it's that virtuous activity. And how I describe virtuous activity is applying your God-given talent to the service of your family, community, and beyond. I would say that figuring out what it is, your God-given talent, and getting out there and getting after it is a worthwhile activity.
One of the things I was sharing with Eric was in that particular presentation, it took about an hour to do it, but at the end I sort of summarized what I learned from him. And I summarized it as the 4 B's of good followership, and not to bore you with all those, I would pay particular attention to the first B, which for me, what I learned from him was to be anonymous, right? Anonymous anonymity in the sense that he did amazing work for so many people. Yet you never really heard much about it until he got to the end when everyone got up to speak about how he took time out of his day and his life to impact each person in such a special way. And then the last B that I learned from him was even at the end, he never whined, complained. He was forever grateful and it was about being a winner in life regardless of the outcome, right? Because we're always headed towards the end at some point or some particular challenge. But I think when you have a good attitude, you're grateful for all your experiences, and you can be a winner regardless of the outcome.
I think that's well said.
Well, we don't need to. I think we said it all.
I think we've covered attitude pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. We I think that we did, and we're always very grateful for all of you who take the time to tune into the Success Tax podcast. Eric and I had this idea a number of years ago, and it has come to fruition, and we're forever grateful for that. We're grateful for you guys tuning in, and we hope that you continue to follow us going forward. Dr. Wells, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir.
So fun. This is great.
Yep. And next, yep.
Thanks for listening to the Success Tax Podcast. For more valuable insights on the entrepreneurial journey, be sure to visit thesuccesstaxpodcast.com. We'll see you next time for another dose of entrepreneurial wisdom.